He sees them across the restaurant. 3 children, 5 years old, his exact eyes staring back at him. She doesn't flinch, doesn't run. The woman he destroyed 6 years ago stands there like a queen, wealthy, untouchable, complete. Mommy, who is that man? His knees almost give out, because he knows. God, he knows. 6 years ago, he told her she was a mistake. 3 words that shattered everything. Now she's everything he threw away. And those children? They're the empire he never knew he lost. What happens when the most powerful man in the underworld realizes his biggest mistake wasn't killing his enemies? It was breaking the only heart that ever truly loved him? Jin Wukang didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in blood, in loyalty bought with fear, in empires built on silence and concrete. But when she walked into the Bellingham Grand, his restaurant, his territory, his city, every certainty he'd ever held turned to ash. 6 years. It had been 6 years since he'd looked into Amara's eyes and said the words that still tasted like poison. It wasn't love. You were a mistake. He'd meant it. At least he'd convinced himself he did. She was a distraction. A beautiful, reckless moment of weakness in a life that couldn't afford weakness. So he cut her out. Clean. Cold. The way he'd been taught. The way his father had taught him. But now she stood 20 feet away. And Jinwoo forgot how to breathe. She wore white. A simple dress that should have been ordinary but looked like armor on her. Her hair was different. Shorter, elegant, pulled back in a way that showed the sharp line of her jaw. The soft girl he remembered had become a woman carved from marble and fire. She didn't see him yet. She was focused on the hostess, speaking with the kind of quiet authority that made people listen without raising her voice. Jinwoo's fingers tightened around his whiskey glass. And then he saw them, 3 children, small hands clutching her dress. Wide eyes taking in the chandeliers and the marble floors with the kind of wonder that didn't exist in Jinwoo's world anymore. Triplets. His blood turned to ice. They couldn't be older than 5, maybe 6. The math slammed into him like a fist to the chest. No. But even as his mind rejected it, his eyes betrayed him. Because one of the boys, the one in the middle with the serious expression, turned his head and Jinwoo saw it. His own face. Smaller. Innocent. But unmistakably his. The same deep-set eyes, the same sharp brow, the same goddamn birthmark on the left temple that Jinwoo had inherited from his grandfather. Mr. Kang? His second-in-command, Huan, materialized at his shoulder, concern flickering across his scarred face. Jinwoo barely heard him, because the boy, his son, was staring directly at him now, and Amara followed his gaze. Their eyes met across the restaurant. For 3 seconds, the world stopped. Her face didn't change, didn't flinch, didn't crack. She just looked at him the way someone might look at a stranger. Polite, distant, empty. That hurt more than any bullet ever had. Jinwoo stood. He didn't plan to. His body moved on instinct, crossing the marble floor with the kind of purpose that made everyone else in the room step aside. Huan followed, tense and alert, but Jinwoo barely registered him. He stopped 3 feet away from her. Up close, she was even more devastating. Older, yes, but there was a strength in her now that hadn't existed before. A self-possession that made her untouchable. Amara. Her name left his mouth like a prayer he'd forgotten how to say. She tilted her head, and for a moment, just a flicker, he saw something in her eyes. Something that might have been pain, or fury, or both. But then it was gone. Jinwoo. Her voice was cool, professional. It's been a long time. The children pressed closer to her, instinctively seeking safety. The boy in the middle, the one with Jinwoo's eyes, stared up at him with an intensity that made Jinwoo's throat close. These are. Jinwoo's voice cracked. He forced steel back into it. Are they my children? Amara said simply. We're here for dinner, if you'll excuse us. She moved to step past him, guiding the children toward their table. But the boy, that serious, storm-eyed boy, didn't move. Mommy, he said, still staring at Jinwoo. Why does he look like us? Amara's jaw tightened, just for a second. It was the only crack in her armor, but Jinwoo saw it. Elijah, she said softly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Come. But Mommy, now. The command was gentle, but absolute. Elijah obeyed, but he kept glancing back at Jinwoo as Amara led them away. Jinwoo stood frozen, his heart slamming against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Huan cleared his throat. Sir, is everything... Find out everything about her, Jinwoo said, his voice barely above a whisper. Where she lives, What she does. Everything. Sir? Jinwoo turned, and Juan actually took a step back at whatever he saw in his boss's face. Everything, Juan. Now. 20 minutes later, Jinwoo sat in his private booth, staring at the file Juan had pulled together. Amara Laurent, CEO of Laurent Enterprises, net worth $47 million, specializing in sustainable architecture and urban development, offices in Seattle, New York, and Atlanta. She'd built an empire, without him. His fingers traced the photograph paper-clipped to the file. Professional headshot. She was smiling in it, that careful corporate smile that didn't reach her eyes. But it was the next page that made his world tilt. Children. Elijah Laurent, Ezra Laurent, Ilara Laurent. Age, 5 years, 7 months. 6 years ago, he'd walked away from her. 5 years and 7 months ago, she'd given birth to his children. Jinwoo's hands started to shake. She'd been pregnant, and he'd told her she was a mistake. The whiskey glass shattered in his grip. Blood dripped onto the file, staining the edges of the children's photos. 3 perfect faces with his eyes, his nose, his goddamn soul staring back at him. Sir, Juan reached for him, but Jinwoo stood abruptly, glass shards falling from his palm. I need to see her. Sir, you're bleeding. I need to see her now. But when he looked toward her table, it was empty. She was gone. And Jinwoo realized, with a clarity that cut deeper than any wound, that he'd lost her twice. The first time he'd thrown her away. The second time she'd chosen to leave, and he had no idea how to get her back. Amara didn't sleep that night. She stood in her penthouse kitchen at 3 a.m., staring at the city lights of Seattle through floor-to-ceiling windows, while her children slept soundly in their rooms. She'd known this moment would come eventually. Seattle wasn't that big. Not when you moved in the circles she'd clawed her way into. But she hadn't expected it to hurt this much. 6 years. She'd spent 6 years building armor, building wealth, building a life where she didn't need anyone, especially not him. And yet, when their eyes met across that restaurant, every carefully constructed wall had trembled, not crumbled. She wouldn't give him that, but trembled. Mommy? Amara turned. Elijah stood in the doorway, his dark hair messy from sleep, wearing the dinosaur pajamas that were currently his favorite thing in the world. Baby, what are you doing up? He patted across the cold marble floor and wrapped his arms around her waist. You're sad. Amara's breath caught. She ran her fingers through his hair. I'm fine, sweetheart. You're lying. God, he was too perceptive. Just like... She pushed the thought away. Go back to bed, Elijah. But he didn't move. Instead, he looked up at her with those devastating eyes. The eyes she saw every day but tried never to think about whose they really were. That man at the restaurant, Elijah said quietly. He's our dad, isn't he? Amara's world stopped. Elijah? Ezra said I'm crazy. Alara said she doesn't care. But I saw it, Mommy. He looks exactly like us. Amara knelt down, bringing herself to his level. Her hands cupped his small face. Listen to me, she said softly. You don't need him. None of you do. You have me. You have each other. That's enough. But that's enough. The words came out sharper than she intended. Elijah flinched and guilt crashed through her. She pulled him into her arms. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry. I need you to trust me, okay? We're fine. We're going to be fine. Elijah buried his face in her shoulder. Okay, Mommy. But when she finally got him back to bed and returned to the kitchen, Amara's phone was lighting up with notifications. Unknown number. She almost didn't open the message, but some self-destructive instinct, made her click it. We need to talk, JW. Her hands tightened around the phone. 3 words. Just like last time. But this time, she wasn't the desperate girl who loved him. This time, she had something to lose. She deleted the message without responding. Jinwoo stared at his phone for 20 minutes, waiting for a response that never came. He sat in his office, a sleek, modern space in the heart of the city that technically belonged to his import-export business, but functioned as the nerve center of his empire. Around him, Seattle's underworld hummed with his influence. Every shipment that moved through the port, every deal made in the shadows, every protection fee paid with trembling hands. He controlled all of it, but he couldn't control this. He couldn't control her. Sir, Juan entered without knocking, which meant it was urgent. We have a problem. Jinwoo didn't look up from his phone. What kind of problem? The Dmitri family is pushing back on the new territory lines. They're saying we're overstepping. Handle it. Sir, I said handle it, Juan. Silence. Then, sir, with respect. You haven't been yourself since Jinwoo's head snapped up. The look he gave Hwan could have frozen blood. Hwan wisely shut his mouth, but Jinwoo knew he was right. He hadn't been able to focus on anything. Meetings blurred together. Decisions that used to take seconds now required effort. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. Elijah, Ezra, Ilara, his children. Children he'd never held, never met, never known existed until 12 hours ago. Set up a meeting with Amara Laurent, Jinwoo said abruptly. Hwan blinked. Sir? You heard me. She's a civilian, sir. If you approach her directly, especially with your reputation, then make it look legitimate. Business proposition. Whatever you need to do. I want a meeting. In 3 days. And if she refuses? Jinwoo's jaw tightened. She won't. But she did. The response came through her executive assistant 2 days later. Ms. Laurent appreciates your interest but must respectfully decline any business dealings with Kang Enterprises at this time. Jinwoo read the message 17 times. Kang Enterprises. She knew exactly who he was, what he was, and she wanted nothing to do with him. Good. That meant she was smart. It also meant he'd have to try harder. Amara was in the middle of a design meeting when her assistant knocked on the conference room door. Ms. Laurent? There's a gentleman here to see you. He says it's urgent. Amara frowned. I don't have any appointments scheduled. He's insistent. Something in her assistant's tone made Amara's stomach drop. She excused herself and stepped into the hallway. Jinwoo Kang stood in her lobby, hands in his pockets, looking completely out of place among the sustainable bamboo furniture and inspirational quotes on the walls. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. His hair was perfectly styled. His expression was carefully neutral. But his eyes were desperate. We need to talk, he said simply. Amara crossed her arms. No, we don't. Amara, you need to leave. Now. They're mine. The words hung in the air like smoke. Amara's entire body went rigid. Excuse me? Jinwoo took a step closer and she saw it then. The exhaustion. The cracks in his armor. The way his hands were shaking just slightly. The children, he said, his voice rough. Elijah, Ezra, Ilara. They're mine, aren't they? Amara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. She could deny it. She should deny it. But what was the point? He'd already seen them. He already knew. Yes, she said coldly. They're yours, biologically. But that's where it ends. Something in Jinwoo's face crumbled, just for a second. Then the mask was back. I want to meet them. No. Amara, you don't get to do this. Her voice was shaking now, fury bleeding through her control. You don't get to walk away, tell me I was a mistake, and then show up 6 years later demanding access to children you never wanted. I didn't know. You didn't care. The words ripped out of her. I tried to tell you. That night. I tried to tell you I was pregnant and you looked at me like I was nothing, like I was trash you needed to throw away. So I did what you wanted. I disappeared. I raised them alone, and they are thriving without you. Jinwoo's jaw clenched. I was wrong. Congratulations. You figured that out 6 years too late. I'm not leaving, Amara. Those are my children. I have rights. Rights? Amara laughed, bitter and sharp. You want to talk about rights? Fine. Talk to my lawyer. But I promise you, Jinwoo, you will never, ever take them from me. She turned to walk away. I don't want to take them. His voice stopped her. I just want to know them. Amara looked back over her shoulder. Jinwoo stood there, and for the first time since she'd met him all those years ago, he looked lost. You made your choice, she said quietly. Now live with it. Then she walked back into her office and closed the door, leaving him standing alone in her lobby. And she didn't let herself cry until she was sure he was gone. Jinwoo didn't go to Amara's office again. He did something worse. He became a ghost. Every morning when Amara dropped the children off at Westwood Academy, the elite private school she'd chosen for its security and education, there was a black car parked across the street. Jinwoo never got out. He just watched. Through the tinted windows, he saw his children. Elijah, with his serious expression, walking between his siblings like a tiny protector. Ezra, bright and loud, gesturing wildly as he told some story. Ilara, quiet and observant, holding her mother's hand. He learned their rhythms, their habits. Elijah liked to stop and examine interesting rocks on the sidewalk. Ezra always had to be reminded to zip his jacket. Ilara hummed to herself when she thought no one was listening. And Amara was a force of nature. She was patient with them, firm when needed, always present, always attentive. Is the kind of mother Jinwoo's own mother had never been. It made his chest ache in a way he didn't have words for. Sir, Juan said from the driver's seat, pulling Jinwoo from his thoughts. This is the 4th morning in a row. I'm aware. She's going to notice. She already has. Jinwoo had seen the way Amara's shoulders tensed when she spotted the car, the way her hand tightened protectively on Alara's. She knew he was there, and she hated it. You should stop, Juan said carefully, before it becomes a problem. Jinwoo's laugh was hollow. It's already a problem, Juan. Then what's your plan? Jinwoo didn't answer, because he didn't have one. For the first time in his life, Jinwoo Kang, the man who controlled an empire built on calculated moves and strategic thinking, had absolutely no idea what to do. The breakthrough came on a Saturday. Amara took the children to Discovery Park, their favorite place with trails and beaches and tide pools that kept them entertained for hours. Jinwoo followed. Not in the car this time. On foot, keeping his distance. Just another stranger enjoying the park. He watched as Elijah led his siblings down to the beach, all 3 of them shrieking with delight as the cold water rushed over their feet. Amara sat on a driftwood log, watching them with a soft smile that Jinwoo had never seen before. She looked at peace, and he realized with brutal clarity that he'd never seen her happy. Not really. Not like this. 6 years ago, when they were together, she'd been in love with him, but love wasn't the same as joy. This was joy, and he'd had nothing to do with it. Higher, Mommy! Push me higher! Ezra's voice cut through Jinwoo's thoughts. The children had abandoned the beach and raced toward the playground. Amara followed, laughing as Ezra climbed onto a swing. Jinwoo moved closer, using the tree line as cover. He watched as Amara pushed Ezra, then Alara, then, when Elijah stubbornly insisted he could swing by himself.
Before you continue, you have 2 choices right now. Keep listening to short previews, or unlock the full story. You get 20 full episodes, exclusive audio, no ads, no interruptions. Listen anytime, anywhere. I scan the QR code on the screen now. Or click the pinned link in the comments. What was never said continues there.
Stood ready to catch him if he fell. She was everything. Mother, provider, protector, home, and Jinwoo was nothing. He turned to leave. Excuse me? The small voice made him freeze. Jinwoo looked down. Elijah stood 3 feet away, staring up at him with those mirror image eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You're following us, Elijah said. It wasn't a question. Jinwoo's throat went dry. Mommy doesn't like it. You're making her scared. Guilt crashed through him. I'm not trying to scare her. Then why do you keep watching us? Jinwoo knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's level. Up close, the resemblance was even more devastating. It wasn't just the eyes. It was the way Elijah held himself, the sharp intelligence in his gaze, the careful way he spoke. I'm watching because... Jinwoo's voice cracked. Because you're my son. Elijah's expression didn't change. Mommy says you don't want us. The words hit like a blade to the chest. That's not true. Then why did you leave? Because I was a coward. Because I was broken. Because I didn't know how to be anything other than what my father made me. But he couldn't say that to a 5-year-old. I made a mistake, Jinwoo said instead. The biggest mistake of my life. Elijah studied him for a long moment. Then, Mommy says we're supposed to learn from our mistakes. She's right. So are you learning? The question was so simple, so direct. Jinwoo felt something crack open in his chest. I'm trying, he said honestly. Elijah nodded slowly. Then he did something that shattered every remaining piece of Jinwoo's armor. He reached out and touched Jinwoo's face, small fingers tracing the birthmark on Jinwoo's left temple. I have one too, Elijah said softly, in the same spot. Ezra doesn't, but Alara does. Jinwoo's vision blurred. Elijah! Amara's voice cut through the moment like a whip. She was running toward them, fear and fury written across her face. When she reached them, she pulled Elijah behind her, positioning herself between Jinwoo and her son. Get away from him, she said, her voice shaking. Jinwoo stood slowly, hands raised. Amara, I said get away. I wasn't. You were following us. Her eyes were blazing. Do you have any idea how terrifying that is? Do you have any idea what I thought when I saw you here? I just wanted to... I don't care what you wanted. The words tore out of her. You don't get to just show up in our lives because you suddenly decided you care. You don't get to stalk us. You don't get to approach my children without my permission. You don't get to... Her voice broke. Jinwoo saw tears gathering in her eyes, and it destroyed him. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it with every broken part of himself. "I'm so sorry, Amara. I didn't know how else to. You should have stayed away." The finality in her voice made him flinch. Amara gathered Elijah close, then called for Ezra and Alara. Within seconds, she had all 3 children behind her. "If I see you near us again," she said, her voice cold and sharp, "I will file a restraining order. Do you understand?" Jinwoo's hands clenched at his sides. Every instinct in him screamed to fight, to push back, to demand his rights. But for once in his life, he listened to the quieter voice, the one that said, "She's right. You have no right to them. You've earned nothing." "I understand," he said quietly. Amara searched his face, looking for a lie. When she didn't find one, she nodded once. Then she turned and left, 3 small hands clutching her dress as they walked away. Jinwoo stood in the empty playground, watching them disappear into the distance. And for the first time in 20 years, since he was a boy watching his father beat a man unconscious for perceived disrespect, Jinwoo Kang broke down and cried. 3 weeks. Jinwoo respected Amara's boundaries for 3 weeks. He didn't follow them, didn't send messages, didn't try to approach, he disappeared. But he didn't stop watching over them. Security guards, trained, invisible, professional, monitored the children's school. The routes Amara drove, the places they frequented, all from a distance, all without being seen. Because Jinwoo had learned something in those 21 days of absence. He'd learned that the underworld had rules. And one of those rules was simple. Weakness gets exploited. The moment word spread that Jinwoo Kang had children, legitimate heirs to his empire, those children became targets. So he protected them, silently, from the shadows, the way he should have from the beginning. But on day 22, everything changed. Amara was finishing a client presentation when her phone rang. Westwood Academy. The school never called unless her blood ran cold. "Ms. Laurent?" The principal's voice was tight with controlled panic. "We have a situation. Your children are safe, but we need you to come immediately." Amara didn't remember the drive. One moment she was in her office. The next she was bursting through the school's front doors, her heart trying to beat out of her chest. The principal met her in the hallway. "Ms. Laurent? Where are they?" "They're in my office. They're unharmed, but—" Amara pushed past her. All 3 children sat on the leather couch in the principal's office. Elijah had his arms around his siblings, his small face set in that too serious expression that meant he was trying not to cry. When they saw her, all 3 launched themselves into her arms. "Mommy, we're okay, Mommy. He tried to take us—" Amara's world tilted. "What?" The principal closed the door. A man approached the children during recess. He identified himself as a family friend and tried to convince them to come with him to his car. Elijah screamed for help, which alerted the yard monitors. The man fled, but she handed Amara a printed screenshot from the security camera. Amara's hands shook as she looked at the grainy image. The man was in his 40s, scar across his jaw, cold eyes, wearing a leather jacket that did nothing to hide the bulk of someone who spent his life enforcing threats. "We've already contacted the police," the principal continued. "But, Ms. Laurent, I have to ask, is there anyone who might want to—" No. The word came out too fast, too sharp. But Amara's mind was racing. Jinwoo. This had to be connected to Jinwoo. She gathered her children, signed them out of school, and drove straight home. Every red light felt like an hour. Every glance in the rearview mirror made her paranoid. When they finally reached her building, she hustled the children inside, locked every door, set every alarm. Then she called the one person she'd sworn she'd never contact again. Jinwoo answered on the first ring. "Amara. Someone tried to take my children." Silence. Then, in a voice she'd never heard from him before, raw and lethal. "Where are you?" "Home. We're safe." "But Jinwoo, if this is because of you, it is." The admission hit her like a fist. "I'm coming to you," he said. "Don't open the door for anyone. I'll be there in 10 minutes. "Jinwoo, 10 minutes, Amara. I swear to God, just give me 10 minutes. He hung up. Amara stood in her kitchen, phone trembling in her hand, and realized that the safe world she'd built for her children had just shattered. Because of him. Because they were his. Jinwoo arrived in 8 minutes. He came alone. No bodyguards, no weapons visible. Just him, in dark jeans and a black shirt, looking more dangerous than any armed man Amara had ever seen. She let him in because she had no choice. The moment the door closed, Jinwoo scanned the apartment with the eyes of someone trained to find threats. Then his gaze landed on the children, huddled together on the couch. Something in his face cracked. Are they hurt? His voice was barely a whisper. No. Scared, but not hurt. Jinwoo crossed the room and knelt in front of them, slowly, carefully, like he was approaching wild animals. Elijah, Ezra, Alara, he said each name like a prayer. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Elijah stared at him. You know who tried to take us. It wasn't a question. Jinwoo nodded. His name is Alexei Morozov. He works for a man I'm in conflict with. They found out about you, and they tried to use you to hurt me. So it is your fault, Amara said, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Jinwoo stood, turning to face her. Yes. No excuses. No deflection. Just that one word, carrying the weight of everything. I've had security on you for 3 weeks, he continued. Guards you never saw, watching from a distance. But I underestimated how fast word would spread. I thought I had more time to what? Amara's voice broke. To what, Jinwoo? To decide whether you wanted to be part of their lives? To figure out if they were worth protecting? They were almost kidnapped because you... I know. The words exploded out of him. I know. You think I don't know? I've spent every second of the last 3 weeks terrified that something like this would happen, that my world would touch them, that I would... His voice cracked. That I would lose them before I ever really had them. Tears were streaming down Amara's face now. You don't have them. You gave up that right. I know that too. Jinwoo's hands clenched at his sides. But they're still mine, and I will burn down every single person who tries to hurt them. I will destroy anyone who even thinks about using them against me. I will... Stop! Elijah's small voice cut through the room. Both adults turned. Elijah stood up, his chin trembling but his eyes fierce. Stop fighting, please. Ezra and Alara clung to each other, tears on their faces. Amara's heart shattered. Jinwoo knelt again. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you more. Are we in danger? Elijah asked directly. Jinwoo could have lied, should have lied. Instead, he said, yes. As long as people know you're mine, you'll be in danger. But I swear to you, I will keep you safe. All of you. Even if it costs me everything. How? Amara demanded. How can you possibly keep us safe? Jinwoo turned to her, and she saw it then, the cold calculation returning to his eyes. The man who built an empire on fear and strategy. You come with me. Absolutely not. Somewhere secure, somewhere no one can reach. Just until I handle this. I'm not running from my life because of your mistakes. Then what? Jinwoo's voice rose. You stay here? In an apartment with glass walls and a single point of entry? You send the children back to school where anyone can walk up to them? You pretend that everything is fine until someone succeeds? The truth of his words made her want to scream. I can protect you, Jinwoo said, softer now. I can keep them safe, but not like this. Not scattered. Not exposed. Amara looked at her children. Elijah was trying so hard to be brave. Ezra was crying silently. Alara was completely withdrawn. And Amara realized she was out of options. How long? She whispered. A week. Maybe 2. Just until I eliminate the threat. And then you go back to your life. I'll make sure no one ever connects you to me again. You'll be safe. You're asking me to trust you. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. I'm asking you to let me fix what I broke. Amara closed her eyes. Every instinct screamed to say no. To handle this herself. To protect her children without his help. But she was a mother first. And mothers did whatever it took. 1 week, she said. And you never come near us again after this. The flash of pain across Jinwoo's face was so brief she almost missed it. Deal, he said quietly. The safe house was not what Amara expected. She'd imagined something dark, industrial, the kind of place you saw in movies about criminals. Instead, Jinwoo brought them to a massive estate in the San Juan Islands, 3 hours north of Seattle, accessible only by private ferry. The house was beautiful, modern architecture blending seamlessly with old-growth forest, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, a massive yard where the children could run without fear. It belonged to my mother, Jinwoo said quietly as they stood in the foyer. She bought it years ago before she died. I've kept it maintained, but I never come here. Amara could hear the weight in those words. The children had already scattered, exploring with the nervous energy of traumatized kids trying to find normal again. There are guards, Jinwoo continued. Perimeter security. But they'll stay out of sight. You won't see them unless there's a problem. And you? I'll stay in the guest house. You and the children have the main residence. Amara studied him. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. When's the last time you ate? She found herself asking. Jinwoo blinked, surprised. I don't remember. Something softened in her chest. She hated that it did. There's food in the kitchen, he said, recovering. Fully stocked. Anything you need, just... Mommy, there's a treehouse. Ezra's shriek of delight echoed through the house. For the first time in hours, Amara smiled. Jinwoo's expression did something complicated. Go, Amara said softly. Handle whatever you need to handle. We'll be fine. He hesitated. Amara, I mean it. We're safe here. So go do what you do. Jinwoo nodded once, then turned to leave. Jinwoo, he stopped. Thank you. For this. He didn't turn around, didn't respond. He just walked out, shoulders tight with everything left unsaid. That night, after the children were finally asleep, exhausted from exploring, from fear, from everything, Amara stood on the deck overlooking the water. The moon was full, turning the waves to silver. She didn't hear Jinwoo approach, but she felt him. Couldn't sleep? He asked, staying a careful distance away. Too much adrenaline. Silence settled between them. Not comfortable, but not hostile either. They're amazing, Jinwoo said finally. The children. I don't even have words. They're everything, Amara agreed. Elijah is... Jinwoo's voice caught. He's so much like I was. Before my father turned me into this. Amara looked at him. Really looked. In the moonlight, without the armor of his suits and his reputation, he just looked human, broken and trying. What happened to you? She asked quietly. Jinwoo's laugh was bitter. You don't want to know. Maybe I do. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, my father was the head of our family, not just in name. He was brutal, effective, terrifying. He raised me to be his successor by breaking every soft part of me. By the time I was 16, I'd seen things that would destroy most people. By 18, I'd done things that make me a monster. You're not a monster. The words surprised them both. Jinwoo turned to her, his eyes searching hers. How can you say that? After everything I did to you? Because monsters don't cry on playgrounds? Monsters don't spend 3 weeks protecting children from the shadows? Monsters don't look at their kids the way you do, like they're the only good thing you've ever created. Jinwoo's breath hitched. You were cruel to me, Amara continued, her voice steady. You broke my heart. You said unforgivable things. But I spent 6 years raising your children, and you know what I see when I look at them? What? Pieces of you. Good pieces. Elijah has your loyalty. Ezra has your passion. Alara has your quiet strength. So either I raised 3 monsters, or there's more to you than the person you think you are. Jinwoo's hands were shaking. I don't know how to be what they need, he whispered. None of us do. We just figure it out. What if I fail them? Then you try again. That's what parents do. Jinwoo turned away, his shoulders heaving with silent sobs. Amara's instinct was to comfort him, to reach out. But she held back, because some wounds needed to be felt. The next 3 days fell into a strange rhythm. Mornings, Jinwoo would disappear, handling his business, though he never elaborated. Amara didn't ask. Afternoons, he'd return, and the children would gravitate toward him like he was magnetic. Ezra was the first to break. On day 2, he asked Jinwoo to play soccer with him. Jinwoo looked so shocked that Amara almost laughed. You don't have to, she said. No, I want to. I don't know how. It's soccer, Jinwoo. You kick the ball. So they played, and Jinwoo was terrible. Ezra thought it was hilarious. He laughed so hard he fell over, and Jinwoo, this dangerous man who commanded an empire, laughed too. Amara watched from the deck, her chest tight with something she refused to name. Alara warmed up slower. But on day 3, she asked Jinwoo to help her build a fairy house from sticks and moss. He approached it with the same intensity he probably brought to criminal negotiations. Is this structurally sound? He asked seriously, examining a tiny stick roof. Alara giggled. It's for fairies, not people. Right, but fairies still need proper architecture. Amara had to leave before she cried. Elijah held out the longest. He watched Jinwoo with those 2 knowing eyes, assessing, measuring, deciding. On day 4, Jinwoo found him sitting by the water, throwing rocks. Can I join you? Jinwoo asked. Elijah shrugged. They sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then Elijah said, Are you going to leave again? Jinwoo's hands stilled. After this week, yes. That's what your mother wants. What do you want? The question destroyed him. I want to know you, Jinwoo said honestly. All of you. I want to be there when you lose your first tooth, and when you learn to ride a bike, and when you wake up from nightmares. I want to teach you things and learn who you are, and make sure you never, ever become what I became. So why are you leaving? Because I hurt your mother, and I don't deserve a second chance. Elijah threw another rock. It skipped 4 times across the water. Mommy says everyone deserves a second chance if they're really sorry. Jinwoo's throat closed. Are you really sorry? Elijah asked, looking at him directly. Yes, Jinwoo whispered. More than you'll ever know. Elijah nodded slowly. Then he handed Jinwoo a rock. Then prove it. On day 7, everything fell apart. Jinwoo received a call at 4 a.m. Juan's voice was tense. It's done. Morozov is handled. The Bratva family has agreed to terms. Your children are no longer targets. Jinwoo should have felt relief. Instead, he felt like someone had ripped his heart out. Because done meant Amara would leave, and he'd agreed to never see them again. He sat in the guest house until dawn, staring at nothing, trying to figure out how to survive losing them a second time. When the sun rose, he walked to the main house. Amara was already awake, making breakfast while the children still slept. She looked up when he entered, and he saw her read the truth on his face. It's over, she said quietly. Yes. She nodded, turning back to the eggs. We'll pack after breakfast. Amara, don't. Her voice broke. Please don't make this harder than it is. I need to say something. Jinwoo, I love them. The words tore out of him. I love them so much it physically hurts. And I love you. I never stopped. I was just too broken and stupid to know what I had until I'd already destroyed it. Amara's hands gripped the counter. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Jinwoo continued. I'm not asking for another chance. I just need you to know that these 7 days were the best days of my entire life, and I will spend the rest of my existence making sure you're all safe, even if I never see you again. Amara turned, tears streaming down her face. You broke me, she whispered. I know. You made me believe I was worthless. I know. And now you stand here and tell me you love me, and I'm supposed to just… What? Forgive you? Forget? No. Jinwoo's own tears fell freely now. I'm telling you so you know. So they know. So when Elijah asks why I'm not there, you can tell him the truth. That I love them. That I wanted to stay. But that I hurt you too much to deserve that privilege. The kitchen went silent except for their ragged breathing. Then, Daddy? They both froze. Elijah stood in the doorway, eyes wide and shining with tears. You called him Daddy, Ezra whispered from behind him. I didn't mean… Elijah's voice shook. It just came out. Jinwoo dropped to his knees and Elijah ran to him. The embrace was desperate. Messy. Everything Jinwoo had never known he needed. Don't go, Elijah sobbed into his shoulder. Please don't go. We just found you. Please. Ezra and Alara ran over too, piling into the hug until Jinwoo was surrounded by them. His children, his whole world. He looked up at Amara through his tears. Her face was devastated. Because she was a mother. And mothers didn't keep their children from fathers who loved them. Even when it hurt. Even when it cost them everything. I can't promise I'll forgive you quickly, she said, her voice shaking. I can't promise I'll ever be what we were. But, she took a shuddering breath. But they need you. And maybe I need to give you a chance to prove you've changed. Jinwoo couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Slowly, Amara continued, with boundaries, with therapy, with me in complete control of how this goes. Anything, Jinwoo managed, anything you want. I swear to you, Amara. I swear on their lives, I will spend every day proving I'm worth this. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Then we stay, for now, and we figure this out, together. The children erupted in cheers, and for the first time in 6 years, Jinwoo felt something he'd thought was dead forever. Hope. 6 months later, the Laurent Kang family had found a rhythm. Jinwoo had stepped back from the worst parts of his empire. He was still powerful, still wealthy, but he'd restructured everything to be legitimate. Legal, clean. It wasn't easy. Some partnerships dissolved, some threats emerged. But every time he felt the pull back to the darkness, he'd look at his children and remember why he was fighting to be better. Therapy helped. Both individual and couples counseling with Amara. They were learning to communicate, to trust, to heal. They weren't together romantically, not yet, maybe not ever, but they were partners, co-parents, friends, slowly. Elijah had stopped having nightmares. Ezra's laughter came easier. Alara had started calling Jinwoo Daddy, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Amara. Amara was learning to see him as more than the man who broke her. She was learning to see the man he was becoming. Tonight they sat on the deck of the island house, which had become their weekend retreat, watching the children play in the twilight. I got a call today, Jinwoo said quietly. Oh? Someone wants to buy a controlling share of my shipping company. Legitimate buyer. It would be the last piece. After this, everything I touch is clean. Amara studied him. How do you feel about that? Terrified, he admitted. For 20 years, I've been building this empire. And now I'm dismantling it, piece by piece. But when I look at them, he gestured to the children. I don't miss it. Not even a little. Amara's hand found his. She still did that sometimes. Small gestures. Testing the waters. I'm proud of you, she said softly. Jinwoo's breath caught. Yeah? Yeah. He squeezed her hand gently, and they sat there. Two broken people learning to build something new from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. A family. Not perfect. Not easy. But real. And worth everything. The black car appeared 3 days later. It wasn't one of Jinwoo's. He knew every vehicle in his fleet. This was different. He was walking the children to school when he spotted it. Parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. His blood went cold. He'd eliminated every threat. Verified every enemy. Made peace with everyone who mattered. So who? The back window rolled down. And Jinwoo saw a face he'd hoped he'd never see again. His father. Alive. The man everyone believed had died in a warehouse fire 5 years ago. The man Jinwoo had helped fake that death to escape the FBI. The man who'd turned Jinwoo into a monster. His father smiled, cold, cruel, familiar. Then he looked directly at Elijah, Ezra, and Alara. And Jinwoo realized with absolute horror, his father knew, and the nightmare was just beginning. Your turn. Let's make this happen. If you're desperate to know what happens next. If you need to see how Jinwoo protects his family from his father. If you're dying to find out what happens between Jinwoo and Amara. Drop a comment right now saying, I need episode AO2. If we get 10 comments asking for part 2, episode AO2 drops tomorrow at 11 a.m. for everyone. Premium members. You get exclusive early access today. Check the members only tab in a few hours. Not a member yet? Just comment below to show me you want episode AO2, and I'll release it tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. sharp. Your comment chalkers your vote for the next episode. I'm waiting for you. Let's hit those 10 comments.
What you've heard so far is only the surface. This story wasn't meant to be consumed in fragments. It was created to be experienced from beginning to end. When you unlock full access, you receive 20 full audio episodes and over 10 hours of immersive storytelling. It's private members only area, not available on YouTube. No ads, no interruptions. Listen on any device, anytime. Lifetime access. And there's more. New content every week, and you can even choose the theme of the next story. But be aware, access for new members is closing. I'd scan the QR code now, or click the pinned link in the comments. What was never said continues now, if you choose to enter.